Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the June 2nd, 2021 meeting. The first item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is attendance. Roger or Wayne?
I'll take care of that.
Thank you.
Mr. Mundy?
Present.
Mr. Lake?
Present.
Mr. Wolf?
Present.
Mr. Jones?
Present.
Mrs. Campins?
Thank you, Mr. DeLong. Quorum is present. Next on our agenda is the approval of the May 5th, 2021 meeting minutes. Any discussion amongst fellow board members? Otherwise, I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Blake. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Mundy. Wayne, do you think we need to do a roll call vote here? We have 3 present. 1.
I think it's just your voice vote.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Those opposed? For the record, that motion passed 4-0. Next item on our agenda is continuance or withdrawal requests. I would make a note that docket number 2021-13-SE, the Brickyard Solar Project, was a continuous request was filed in a timely manner according to our rules. That petition will be heard at the July 7th, 2021 meeting. So once again, the Brickyard Solar Project will not be heard tonight. It'll be heard on the July 7th, 2021 meeting. In addition, are there any other petitioners on our agenda tonight who wish to request a continuance or withdrawal? Please come forward and state your name.
My name is John Towsley. I'm an attorney with offices at 410 West Oak Street, Suite 8, Zionsville, Indiana, 46077. Telephone number, area code 317-636-2900. I'm here today on behalf of Green Hart, Deanna Hart, and Colleen Parks. They're owners since about 1930 of approximately 240 acres that are next to the Hickory Hall Polo Club. I'm here tonight to ask for a continuance of both petitions to the board's next meeting on July 7, 2021. This is our first continuance request. It was filed on May 27, 2021. That was 6 days before this meeting, so it doesn't fall within the automatic continuance provisions. The purpose of the request, several. I just found out about this case last Wednesday evening. And so it takes up a little bit of time to get your head into a case, to talk to people, to look at the impact, to look at the ordinances. In addition, it also takes time to try to resolve something, hopefully without a disputed hearing. I met with my clients this afternoon. We have a outline of a proposal that we would like to make to the petitioners. I intend to reduce that to writing, provide that to my client to make sure that I understand them. I think it was Mark Twain who once said the problem with communication is language. I run into that a few times, so always nice to put it down in writing. They then intend to speak with their neighbors to see if they concur with the proposal and then make that proposal to Mr. Andreoli. We'll need time to pull that together, but that is something that we intend to do. In addition, I think the board tonight is lacking certain information it needs to proceed. I would point out that one of the petitions on the setback lines is based upon a GIS map. I have probably prepared hundreds of deeds and other conveyances regarding property over my 43 years as an attorney, but I have never once prepared any document that relied upon a GIS map to determine where boundary lines are. Looking into that, I found an article that was authored in 2010 that explained the GIS data is pulled together from a variety of sources with varying degrees of accuracy and precision. Overlaid together, the error found within each data set is amplified. Therefore, overlaying a parcel database that may have an accuracy of plus or minus 10 feet onto aerial imagery with an accuracy of plus or minus 30 feet can lead to features ending up 80 feet away from their true point. That is what you're being asked tonight to rely upon in determining whether or not there should be a setback variation. Secondly, it's pointed out by one of my clients, because frankly, I missed it. There may be a problem with the petitioner's affidavit of mailing. One in your packet, at least on the packet that I downloaded from the website of this town, was not signed or notarized, nor did it include a complete petition number. The other was signed, but there was no date of notarization indicated. So for these reasons, I believe that a continuance at this point will hopefully avoid further conflict, resulting in another hearing disputed. And I also believe that the petition should not proceed tonight because of the technical problems I pointed out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tousley. If we could get clarity on a couple points. You're referring to petition 2021-17-SC and 2021-18-DSV for the property located at 7551 East 100 North?
That's correct.
And you are requesting these two petitions be continued to the July 7th, 2021 meeting?
That's correct.
Any discussion amongst fellow board members?
Mr. President, we have an opportunity to respond.
You may. Mr. Andreoli, give me 1 minute, but I will bring you up. Any discussion amongst board members? Any questions? I guess, Mr. Tousley, my ask would be that if you are going to come back to, if we grant the continuous request and you're going to provide additional information to the petitioners and or their representative, you do that in a timely manner. I'd hate for them to get something in the 11th hour, July 4th of 2021. So please do your best to get it to them in a timely manner.
I can assure you, because I like you, I suspect I've had the same experience of trying to negotiate a last minute. I frankly am getting too old for this stuff. So the sooner we can get it done, the better.
Okay. Before we bring Mr. Andreoli up, any thoughts on this continuous request at this point? Okay. Mr. Andreoli, do you have some thoughts? And would you please state your name and address in your relation to this case?
Yes, sir. For the record, my name is Mike Andreoli, 1393 West Oak Street here in Zionsville. I represent Greg Chandler in this application for special exception as well as a setback variance. And we take exception with what Mr. Tousley told you, that it was based upon a GIS map. It's based upon a 100-year fence line that's been there in that particular area for many, many, many years. And that is what we have taken the property line to be over the years. There's been no dispute with regard to that particular property line. We've never gotten a full survey other than mortgage surveys. We've never gotten a full survey of the ground, nor has the petitioner, but that fence line has been there for a long period of time. I told Mr. Tousley that I would not agree to a continuance since it was outside that time period. But of course, this is within your good offices to make a decision on whether you want to move it forward tonight. We're happy to go ahead and present our limited argument tonight to have you hear that part of it if you'd want to get that out of the way. but we'll leave it up to your grid offices to determine whether or not you want to bump this to the July meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Andreoli. We have a neighbor who is requesting a continuance request for further details, more information, and hopefully, I believe I heard a proposed solution that make everyone agreeable. Generally, as a group, we've been amendable to those requests. It's certainly, as Mr. Andreoli points out, our prerogative to choose to accept this continuance request or not. So I'll open it up for discussion.
I guess my preference would be to grant the continuance, given that it's a month, and unless there is some dire need that it be reviewed this evening, that we grant the request to continue.
Mr. Jones, will you say hi just so we know that we can hear you?
Hi, can you hear me?
Any other thoughts on this? Otherwise, I would entertain a motion.
I move that petition 2021-17-SC and petition 2021-18-DSB be continued to the July 7th Board of Zoning Appeals meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Mundy. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Lake. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes 4-0. That petition will be heard on, those petitions will be heard on July 7th. Thank- You didn't, and I'm amendable to these things. Was there a question on the notice as well?
The question that was articulated is related to the execution, the notarization, and just the completeness in terms of the form.
So staff will help facilitate that.
We can certainly double check it. And oftentimes you find the notice form that is uploaded on the website is what the petitioner turns in the day they file. It's not the same as what's contained in the file and executed.
Okay.
I got a quick question. The rear yard setback, is that for the existing building there or?
Mr. Jones, you can't hear a case we're not going to hear tonight.
Well, I'm trying to, okay, well, the question along the line is trying to lend a little support to Mr. Tousley's statement about should we ask for a request a survey?
I think that, I think Mr. Androli is aware of the concerns that the remonstrators has, and I'm hoping they'll address those in the next 30 days.
Okay.
I guess we have a notice question, and I will defer
But we've filed our affidavit
in a timely
Notice.
manner.
and that's all been properly filed and submitted. So
This is a public hearing. If they were wanted to participate in the public hearing and to hear how it goes, they just heard that it was continued.
That's correct.
Correct. And again, I don't believe the question was completeness in terms of who received notice and who didn't. It's
Right.
completeness in the form in terms of the verbiage and the numerical items being listed out.
Mr. Androli, you do not need to refile notice.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Are there any other petitioners on our agenda tonight who wish to seek a continuance or withdrawal requests? Okay, at this time, I'm going to deviate from our agenda slightly. We have waived the rules to allow for certified mail to use regular mail. And so is there a motion to suspend our rules for tonight's meeting to allow the use of regular mail?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Mundy. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Next on our agenda is continued business, which brings us to docket 2020-11 UV, as well as docket 2020-12 DSV. Will the petitioner's representative please come forward?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Matt Price with an address of 10 West Market Street, Indianapolis, Indiana, with a law firm of Denton's. And I'm here tonight on behalf of the Pampered Pooch Pampered Pooch Resort and Spa, which I think we had initially described the business as the doggy daycare. I think that was more of just a shorthand expression for the resort and spa business. This was filed on behalf of Harris FLP and its tenant, which is the Pampered Pooch. And thank you, Joe Russ, for loading up my PowerPoint. Let me just acquaint you a little bit with the property in question. If you can go to the first slide. Okay, so north is pointing towards Michigan Road, and this is part of the Appaloosa Crossing development. The project is located on the southernmost outlot, what we refer to as Outlot K. It's a 1.25 acre outlot with a approximately 7,800 square foot multi-tenant building. The Pampered Pooch would occupy just under 5,000 square feet, the southern larger section of the building. And then the northern section of the building is for a veterinarian's office, which is a companion user, and we think a complementary use to this proposal. You'll also see towards the rear of the building on the east side is an approximately 3,000 square foot yard area that'll be enclosed by a 6-foot privacy fence. That's for outdoor exercise of the guests and other business that they may have outdoors from time to time. The nature of the use is to provide a high-end daycare for dogs. So it provides both daytime lodging and care for the animals, as well as grooming services, all done by reservation only. And it does also provide overnight accommodations as well, and again by overnight, or excuse me, by reservation. I can go to the next slide. Just to give you a little idea of what the building will look like. This is the viewpoint from Michigan Road, and it's following what we call the Appaloosa theme, which is to build on some of the equestrian and agricultural heritage of the property. It's been in the Harris family, as we've talked about, over the last couple of years for over 50 plus years. And the barn like structure is the area where the doggy daycare will be located. And that is to imitate and replicate the same architectural feature in the retail shops further north along Michigan Road. So it carries that theme all the way through the development, both for the building further north and then this one at the southernmost end. You go to the next slide, Joe. Thank you. One other thing you'll note in the staff report is that we are seeking 3 development standards variances in addition to the use variance. 2 of those have become somewhat common to the Appaloosa Crossing family of proposals, in that we are seeking to eliminate the requirement for the 6-foot parking strip, green strip, which we've done on each one of the outlots further north along Michigan Road. And secondly, we're seeking in this case to a variance from the requirement for foundation plantings. We do have plantings on the west side of the building, away from the building, but they're just not up against the foundation. That's because the building itself is really not designed to have plantings up against it and underneath the awning. The staff report notes support for those variances, provided that we relocate the plantings that would otherwise be in the 6-foot parking lot strip and put them towards the south and east of the building to provide additional screening. And that's what we show on this landscape plan, which is also part of our development plan approval, which was approved conditionally by the Plan Commission 2 weeks ago. We believe it provides a very unique combination of uses. This parcel is unique in the Appaloosa Crossing development in that the area immediately south of it is an over 1 acre open space that provides additional buffering between Bridlewood to the south and this lot. The use itself is kind of a quasi service type use that we think is suitable for this area. The personal services that are provided to the dogs are grooming and personal care type services that are done by appointment only, in much the same way that other professional services are done by appointment only. This is a high-end offering done by professionally trained staff, and we think will provide a much-needed service in the community that loves its pets, loves its dogs. And so we think it will be very welcome in the community as well. So for all those reasons, we'd respectfully request your approval of our use variance and our development standards variances. And I should mention that the owners are here with me this evening as well to answer any questions that you may have about the operation specifically. And we'd welcome any questions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Price. Let's start with the findings of fact. And I think you've articulated them well. On the use variance, there are 6 burdens you must meet, and I think several of them are clear and concise, and as I mentioned, articulated well. I think it's always important for us to cover number 3 and number 4. If you would walk us through those.
Sure. 3 has to do with whether there's a condition peculiar to the property that makes this variance appropriate. But we think that there is. This parcel is the only parcel within the Appaloosa Crossing development that adjoins an open common area to the south that was added to the project because it helped facilitate its drainage, among other things. So it's kind of a parcel that was created because of the natural features of the property, and it lends itself to that additional screening that we think is appropriate between this use and the adjoining residential use to the south. So that's the peculiar condition. The next one is whether there's a hardship relating to it. And again, you have to kind of take a look at the project as a whole here. This is a development that's been laid out to provide services to both folks coming to the development potentially to work and to shop, but also to folks who are traveling by on their way to and from work. So it's situated along Michigan Road, where many folks in Zionsville travel back and forth in their daily lives, and in particular on their way to and from work. So the daycare aspect of this along the highway is particularly makes this parcel unique to this particular use. And in addition, again, I go back to the physical features of the property lending itself to providing the screening and being a service-oriented use along this corridor. The other thing I would add too, and it's just kind of a practical thing that's happening around the country, is that there was a point in our nation's history when a lot of dogs in the country generally lived in a more rural environment. Today, I've read studies that show that the majority of dogs live in more urban environments and are actually receive this kind of personalized care by their owners as their owners go about either go on vacation or otherwise are going to and from work. And so what you've seen across the country is a rise in the popularity of these kind of specialized care, resort and spa businesses for dogs. And you see it in Carmel, along Meridian Street, in downtown Carmel. And so the precise land use that we're describing here doesn't necessarily fit into ordinances that were written 20, 25 years ago that I think were more concerned about boarding and kenneling and that kind of a business operation, as opposed to more of a personal service type business. So in some ways, the use itself doesn't really fit squarely within the zoning ordinance as it's currently written. That contributes to the hardship.
Perhaps one way of thinking about it, and you correct me where I go wrong, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but is the zoning may have been written with the understanding that kennels are outdoor activities with dogs barking and those types of things in kind of rural countrysides. And this, what is in front of us, is an indoor activity. There's an outdoor area.
That's right. It's predominantly indoors. There is an area where the dogs are taken for organized activity, like organized exercise and play with each other, but it's an intermittent activity. It's not something that's done for sustained periods of time. Then they're brought back indoors and go through, in some cases, programs for education, training, and their general wellness and feeding, et cetera.
And then I have an additional question on the design side. We've seen the first two requests before, and those are consistent with what we've discussed in the past. So we're not reducing any plantings, we're just moving the plantings. And the one I was more interested in was the height variance. Is there why do we need the height variance?
Yeah, it's a function of a couple of things, one of which we're trying to achieve that same architectural gabled roof for the barn-like feature on this building as we have on the northern building. The northern building didn't require a variance because it's in the general business zoning classification and we're within the height limitation there. This building is the same height, but there's a lower standard in this zoning district. And so to achieve that overall architectural theme, we need that slight difference in height. I should also add that during the Plan Commission hearing, it was also noted that one thing that's being looked at in our zoning ordinance, I think going forward as we look at potentially recodifying some things, is that we measure height in a unique way in Zionsville, where we measure it from the adjoining grade to the highest point, as opposed to the midpoint on the roof line. And so if the height were measured perhaps in a more traditional way, as was being discussed at the Plan Commission, then maybe we wouldn't need the height variance at all. So it's a combination of those two things. The departure from the height standard is relatively small. I think we're looking at less than 2 feet.
It's 2 feet.
So it's not a big trade-off for the architectural consistency that we hope to
So
achieve.
the height is not a function, it's really an aesthetic. And if
It's aesthetic.
yeah, and so if we didn't approve it, then the building would have a skewed look versus its neighbors, et cetera.
It would, and I don't want to put words in Mr. Lake's mouth, but in the Plan Commission,
He is the architect.
he's the architect, and he can speak better to that issue than I.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Mr.
and I will state during the meeting, we did talk about this, and a lot of the municipalities adjacent to us and that I work in across the country, they measure the height of a building that has a pitched roof from the crest of the roof to the eaves, that average height, not to the actual top of the roof. If it's a flat roof with a parapet, they measure it to the top of the parapet. And so we're saying it's the top of the roof, and that's not a typical measurement that I experience. It's typically the midline. And to look at it, if you look at this development, you want it to be homogeneous across the development, and all the roofs have the same pitch, and then you get to the one at the end and it's flatter, it will look noticeable. And the 2 foot that it's above the standard, to me, doesn't justify the need to drop it down. That's my personal opinion.
If it's good for Mr. Lake's aesthetic, it's good for mine. What other questions do we have for the petitioner?
The outdoor activity, well, that's supervised. I mean, if there are, I guess I'm imagining here that any objection by neighbors or even other shoppers might be noise, because this is a fenced area, so but if there is a particularly noisy dog, is there someone supervising that would say, okay, time for you to go in?
Absolutely. One of the things that is offered by the Pampered Pooch is there's continual supervision. It's not that you're just let out and go run wild. And it's they also group, as I understand, group the dogs based on their characteristics, so that they can isolate if they've got a dog or dogs that might otherwise be docile, but when together might not be as docile. So they watch all of that. And if there is an issue, there are back doors specifically constructed that we've discussed with the owners to make sure there's easy access for people and dogs in and out, so that can be done very quickly.
And also that's, those outdoor activities aren't really going to be occurring at night, overnight.
Correct. Yeah.
So the noise would be during the day, which really
Yeah.
it would not be the problem. It would be at night.
It's on Michigan Road.
Yep.
There's gonna be noise.
Yeah, I mean, the cars are going to drown out the dogs.
Yeah. Hopefully it's a good fence. Any other questions for the petitioner's representative at this time? Thank you, Mr. Price.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Are there any members of our public who wish to speak for or against this particular petition? If so, please come forward. And do we have anyone online who?
We do not.
There's not a single person online?
Right.
No. Or that boring?
I guess we should clarify, if there is anyone online that would like to speak regarding this petition, either for or against, if you could raise your hand, and you can do that by, at the bottom of your screen, there is an icon that says raise hand. Please click on that, and we will give you the opportunity to speak at this time.
I'm going to pause for a moment to let that happen.
There are no hands raised.
Thank you, sir, which would bring us to the staff reports. Where's the staff report going?
I'll take that.
Okay, Mr. DeLong, I think we could probably do, if you'll do one at a time, but we'll probably have both of them at the same time. That makes sense?
Certainly, yes. Certainly with the use variance as articulated, this use does not squarely fit within your zoning ordinance. There is a caveat within the zoning ordinance which allows the administrator to make a determination and go through a separate process, but that is not what's happened here. This is a variance of use. Certainly staff finds a more appropriate process. Staff is supportive of the petition as it's been filed, specific to the use variance, and noting the petitioner themselves are involved in facilitating residential development in proximity to this site, certainly emphasizing the anticipated compatibility of the development with the neighboring residential uses. Specific to the development standards variances, as noted, the two requests that you've mentioned already that have been routinely supported by this board, certainly the zoning ordinance, generally speaking, are written in a manner that not all uses and development standards fit squarely within more modern type of development. And certainly we really look to leverage this exact conversation as we work towards the form-based ordinance over the next 14 months or so, addressing these types of situations. Specific to the height, same issue. You have a zoning ordinance that squarely defines how height is measured. However, as we've discussed, at least the Plan Commission, historically and by the Boone County zoning ordinance, height is measured differently. This is a rural area. Neighborhoods like Austin Oaks and others enjoy that definition of height. And certainly that is something that we look to continue to facilitate here. Mr. Lake's review of the project as well noted some aesthetic issues that could be created by a lower roof line. And certainly staff is encouraging of the development pattern that you're seeing facilitated by the developer. With that, I'll pause and answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. DeLong. Any questions for staff? Any discussion amongst the group? Otherwise, I will entertain a motion for my fellow board members. I would encourage us, let's treat these individually. So let's do them numerically. So let's start with 11.
Ask a question
Certainly.
first. I think it was touched upon. With the use variance, we often put a sunset on that. I guess I don't see any reason why we wouldn't, although I think in this case, we may want to get a little more information. I mean, perhaps the sunset, if we wish to impose that, would be consistent with what the likely length of a first lease might be or something like that. But Wayne, from your perspective, is this a sunset on the use variance something that should be there?
Certainly, I think you can discuss how this use, its anticipated compatibility, the developer leveraging their very own assets to build residential uses in proximity. I think in a nutshell, it could be that the developer themselves will determine if there is a compatibility issue within their development. Certainly, at the same breath, I could see the town actually working through this form-based ordinance to facilitate this more modern amenity that simply was not, thought about 30 years ago when you're putting together a zoning ordinance. So, long answer of answering the question. The short answer, no.
I personally don't see a problem with just not imposing a sunset period, given all that. So I was not advocating for one thing or the other, but just a question.
Mr. Monday, as I think about when we've used the sunset, it's oftentimes when we have open questions on intensity of use and how it will affect the neighbors. And I can think of particular issues where we've had these remote facilities where we had weddings and things like that. And we just didn't know, we thought we were making the right choice, but wanted to give ourselves an out, or at least the town, an opportunity to go back and revisit that with additional information. In this particular case, if someone were to drive by, in my opinion, if someone were to drive by this facility, I don't think they would say that's out of character. It doesn't fit the rest of this particular development. I think they wouldn't realize that they had to come and get a variance. And consequently, I think it probably is not necessary, but that's my opinion, and I'm amendable.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree.
Any other discussion amongst the group? If not, I will entertain a motion on docket 2020-11-UV.
So I move that docket number 2021-11-UV, a use variance to permit an animal care facility, including the services of dog grooming, daycare, and overnight accommodations on Outlot K of Appaloosa Crossing, being within the Rural Professional Business District, PB, be approved as filed based on the findings of fact as presented and subject to the approval of 2021-12-DSB, which would require the relocation of required landscaping materials to the area identified on Exhibit 6 of the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Lake. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Wayne, it just occurred to me that we've traditionally done those votes via roll call. I got turned around when we were half hybrid, half in and out. Perhaps we should treat this next back to a roll call vote, just to make sure we're clear.
Yes, sounds fine.
Thank you. Someday our world will be back to normal. With that, I would entertain a motion on docket number 2020-12-DSB.
I would move that docket 2021-12-DSV, the Development Standards Variance Request, to remove the requirement for an additional 6-foot wide planting strip along the US 421 frontage, to remove the requirement of foundation plantings along the west-facing facade, and for the proposed building to exceed the maximum building height in the Rural Professional Business District, PB, on Outlot K of Appaloosa Crossing, with the landscaping materials from the 6-foot wide strip to be relocated to the southeastern portion of the subject site as depicted on the attached landscape plan, Exhibit 5, being within the Rural Professional Business District, PB, be approved as filed based upon the findings of fact as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Mr. DeLong, I'll turn it to you for a roll call vote.
Certainly. Mr. Mundy,
Aye.
Mr. Lake,
Aye.
Mr. Wolf,
Aye.
Mr. Jones.
Thank you. Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Price. Mr. Price is still here. Thank you, Mr. Price. Assumed he didn't leave. Next item on our agenda is new business, which would have brought us to docket 2021-13-SE. But as previously noted, that petition, this is the Brickyard Solar Project, has been continued to the July 7th, 2021 meeting, which moves us to docket 2021-14-SE for the property located at 3200 East 750 South. Will the petitioner please come forward?
Mr. Chairman, my name is Paul Carroll. The office is at 13 North State Street, Greenfield, Indiana, 46163 with Booty. Represent the petitioners, Amy and Raj Sandhu. I have Miss Amy Sandhu here in the audience with me if there are any questions for her. They own the tract of land, the 11.36 acre tract of land located at approximately 3200 East County Road 750 South, Lebanon, Indiana. They also own the 4.85 acre tract of agriculturally zoned ground immediately to the north and adjacent to this subject parcel. Only the 11.36 acre parcel is part of this petition here today. This tract is and will continue to be zoned as agricultural property. What is being sought today is a special exception under your ordinance to permit the construction of a single family residential structure on the existing ground, taking up, by my math, about 3% of that 11 acre tract to place their home. Ms. Sandhu operates a horse farm. I'm sure there's more of a technical term for it on the property currently. It's a boarding and training for horses. The horses graze on the grassy area in this 11 acre tract, so it is anticipated that it will continue to be used for agricultural purposes. In determining whether or not a special exception to allow this construction is appropriate, this board considers three specific factors. First, that the proposed use will not be injurious to the public health, safety, comfort, community moral standards, convenience, or general welfare. The anticipated construction here is located over 625 feet from the existing structure to the north, which again, the petitioner owns, over 800 feet from the existing structure to the southeast. This anticipated construction and the ability to use the remainder of the land for agricultural purposes is consistent with the development pattern on the east and west sides of County Road 750 West. Given all of that, I don't believe it can be said that this use and this project would be injurious to the public health, safety, comfort, or moral standards of the area. Instead, the construction of this home for these owners, in combination with the right to farm commitment that staff has proposed, and we are certainly agreeable to, as it is in your ordinance, and the anticipated agricultural use of the property, we believe that satisfies all the concerns of the first requirement. The second requirement is that the proposed use will not injure or adversely affect the adjacent area or property values therein. It is doubtful that the construction of a single family home consistent with the existing development patterns in the area, substantial distance from existing structures, and a development pattern consistent with the area, and at a significant price point for the home could possibly be adverse to any of the surrounding property values. The third component factor, the proposed use will be consistent with the character of the district land uses authorized therein in the town of Zionsville's comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan provides that the purpose for the agricultural district is to encourage agricultural operations allowing for limited residential use, and that's specifically what we're requesting here. We will continue to use the property in an agricultural manner, continue to be zoned agriculturally. Well, the owner and operator of that operation seeks to construct a single family residence on the property. And we believe that's consistent with the comprehensive plan. I've had a handful of neighbors who have reached out, I believe largely with concerns that this, they saw the notice, the signs, they want to make sure this wasn't going to be a dense residential development. And we've certainly assured them that that's not the case. I've received no objection. I don't believe an objection has been filed with the staff. to this petition. We've received a favorable recommendation from the staff report. Given all of that and as proposed use, we would request that this board approve the special exception application that's been filed. And again, if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. And we do have the owner if there are any specific questions.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll. And also thank you for walking us through the findings of fact. Any questions for the petitioner's representative? Give it another minute. I won't wait that long. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any members of our public who would like to speak for or against this particular petition, or just want to discuss it for the record? Roger, can I ask you that you also look online?
Mr. Wolf, there are no hands raised online.
Thank you very much. I'll give it another minute. Wayne, will you be providing us the staff report?
Certainly. Staff is supportive of the petition as it's been filed, and certainly it's unique to discuss that ultimately this party owns additional ground. That is not necessarily a subject of this conversation in terms of actually being a part of the petition, but certainly represents a homesteading, if you will, of this larger farmstead. And certainly that's an activity that you find in this area. Certainly, as referenced, the staff's recommendation of approval is subject to the right to farm. Certainly that is actually required by your zoning ordinance and finds its origins from your reorganizational documents. Something is actually a process that was mandated to be included in your zoning ordinance. Again, staff is supportive of the petition as it's been filed, so to the right to farm, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Long. Any questions for staff? I should reach out to the petitioner's representative. They are aware of the right to farm back. You can nod. They are aware of that. And also it's close to an airport. They're aware of that as well. Okay, perfect. Thank you. For the record, the petitioner's representative nodded that they are aware of the right to farm. Any discussion amongst the group? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion for docket number 2021-14.
I move that docket 2021-14-SC, a special exception petition in the agriculture district for the property located at 3200 East County Road 750 South in Lebanon, and I assume that's a mailing address, be approved based on the staff report and proposed findings as presented, and require that the petitioner execute the right to farm acknowledgement documentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mundy. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Lake. Mr. DeLong, I'll turn it to you for a roll call vote.
Mr. Lake,
Aye.
Mr. Wolf,
Aye.
Mr. Jones,
Aye.
Mr. Mundy.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries. Good luck with your project. Next item on our agenda is docket 2021-
Petitioner's got a question.
Yeah.
Oh,
I was just asking out of curiosity, the right to farm requirement.
it's a long
County
story.
is a very strong agricultural community, and so that's oftentimes it's a document executed not by somebody who's farming. So it might seem a little awkward, but it's still a requirement nonetheless. Thank you.
I think there's a right to industrial.
We created that as well.
Yeah, so I've been around too long. The next item on our agenda is docket 2021-15-SE for the property located at 2998 Rue de, oh my goodness.
Good day, Chateau.
Thank you very much. Will the petitioner please come forward and state your name and address for the record?
Yes, my name is David J. Mussick, 2970 Balmason Drive, Zionsville, Indiana. And I'm here from Old World Development Company, which I own. And I'm here to represent Andrew and Laura Dahlem to obtain a special exception to allow for the building of a single family residence on their ag lot. A little bit of history about the lot. I'm the original developer of Rue des Chateaux. It was 42 acres that we purchased back in 2006. We just built 3 homes on the property, and we had this 2-acre lot that had an original residential house on it. And it was always our intention to sell that lot and build a new home on that lot. So in the meantime, when zoning went through and everything and got annexed to Zionsville, I think it kind of got lost, and we were kind of unaware that we had to file for a special exception for the property. So based on this, our intentions were to replace the existing home with a new home that would fit right in with our vision of the surrounding homes of Rue des Chateaux. I don't know if we have the pictures, but I don't know if it's in your staff report of.
It is.
Okay, all right. I don't have all the fancy computer stuff, but based on the staff report and based on the situation with the surrounding residential homes, the fact that there was an existing home on the lot, we feel that the location lends itself to a residential home and is consistent with the surrounding area. And there will not be any injurious or have any adverse effect on the area whatsoever. Actually, it'll enhance the area that it's in. It actually is within the walls of Rue des Chateaux, but it is a separate lot. So it is within the walls of it. If you look at if you're familiar with the subdivision on that. So what we're asking for is, again, the staff report came out and was consistent that that this house would lend itself to the residential because it is surrounded in a residential community. And I just want to thank you for your time, and I hope you will grant the Dollars their special request to build their dream home. And does anybody have any questions?
Thank you, sir. You may have mentioned it up front. When did you develop this, the whole property?
Well, the whole property, we bought it in 2006.
Okay.
So it was at a county level that we subdivided it.
Okay.
So we just built 3 homes right now. And those homes were built within the last 7 years. Okay, and one of them was just built recently. So those homes are finished. This is the last lot to be developed.
And as I looked at as I drove through the area, they look to be very nice homes. You would say the proposed dwelling is consistent with those?
Very consistent. There actually is a picture in the staff report
saw that.
of the home that will be constructed.
What other questions do we have for the petition? Maybe I have one more. Sorry.
Okay.
As I look at exhibit 2, which is just the aerial,
Mhm.
you have the road going through Rue des Chateaux.
Yes.
And it looks as if the parcel the road bisects the parcel. Is that true?
Correct. If you look through your packet, there will be an easement.
Okay.
So all those lots are fed with one road.
Okay.
In there. And that is maintained.
You addressed that with an easement.
Yeah, there's a grant of easement included in the packet.
Yeah, from back in 2006.
Yes, correct.
What other questions do we have for the petition? Are there any members of our public who wish to speak for or against this particular petition? And if you're online, please raise your hand.
Mr. Wolf, there are no hands raised online.
Thank you, sir. Mr. DeLong, will you provide us the staff report?
Certainly. Staff is supportive of the petition as it's been filed. This is a unique set of circumstances due to your own zoning ordinance. You have a zoning ordinance that requires a special exception for the platting of agriculturally zoned ground. And then in the same breath, it also requires an additional special exception to be granted, considered and granted for each home that's to be built. Certainly, this property would certainly have the privilege of leveraging the prior history with the 2009 home that was there through demolition. Certainly not looking to lose that history in terms of exemptions from road impact fee, park impact fees, because of that legacy still carries forward. But specifically to rebuild a home, there is no language in the zoning ordinance that creates the opportunity to rebuild a home when it's past 6 months. I mean, if you had a nonconformity, you can rebuild that nonconformity. You don't lose that right based on our nonconforming chapter, but this is well beyond that moment. Hence the filing. Certainly staff is supportive of the petition as it's been filed, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. DeLong. Any questions for staff?
And just want to, we will have our right to farm. I've got it notarized already. I'll just bring down tomorrow.
Thank you for acknowledging the right to farm. If there's no further discussion, I would entertain a motion for docket 2021-15-SE.
I move that docket 2021-15-SE, a special exception petition in the agricultural district for the property located at 2998 Rue de Chateau Lane, Zionsville, be approved based on the staff report and proposed finding of facts as presented. And if approved, it shall be required that the petitioner execute the right to farm acknowledgement documentation.
Thank you, Mr. Lake. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Mundy. Mr. DeLong, will you hold a roll call vote, please?
Certainly. Mr. Wolf,
Aye.
Mr. Jones,
Aye.
Mr. Mundy,
Aye.
Mr. Lake.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. Good luck with your project.
Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Next item on our agenda is docket 2021-16-DSV for the property located at 85 East Poplar Street. Will the petitioner please come forward and state your name and address?
Yes, I'm Susan Carr. I'm the resident at 85 East Poplar Street. I just noticed on the agenda that it's listed as Popular Street. It is a popular street.
It is a lovely street.
But anyway, as you probably know from looking at all that I've submitted, it's a family home. It's over 100 years old, listed in the first census in 1894. It was my great aunt and uncles, Aunt Maud and Uncle Lee, and they worked on the railroad and they loved that home, and also actually had the lot next door where, which has been sold, in the big house is there now. My mom and dad then inherited the house, and then when they passed on, my brothers and I did, and my brothers live out west, and so they were happy for me to be able to buy them out. So I plan on living there, aging in place, but I need a little bit more room. So I'm in the process of opening up my kitchen, and this didn't need a variance because it was already, within my living area. I guess that's my allotted space, and adding an area with another bedroom and bathroom, full bathroom, a little living area, and a little utility room, and then an attached garage. And the garage is what I need the variance for, because we have already taken down the garage that was there. It was I don't know if you've ever seen it when you've driven by, but it was old, and very difficult to maneuver in. And my car really filled it up. So I'd like to have a 2-car garage and have it attached so that I don't have to walk out as I'm aging in place, and take chances on falling as I go in with my groceries and whatnot. So I would like to have it attached, and that's the plan. So I would like to have a 2-car garage, and we've already taken the garage down, and then also learned that the setback is 20 feet. I hope I'm saying this properly, 20 feet instead of 12. And the current garage was just 12 feet, the formerly current garage was just 12 feet back. So we'd just like the variance to be able to have just a little bit more room with my garage. It won't take any more space than it had, other than a little bit more width on each side of my neighbors. One of my neighbors is here, that's at one of those sides, and my other neighbors are from across the street. I have businesses on the other side of the alley from me. I think they've been in support as well. And so that's my request. Any questions?
Yeah, thank you. It's a lovely home. Do you have any intention of changing the exterior? We're looking at the back of the house, of the front of the house, or?
Yeah, no, I want, and we're gonna make everything very consistent with, I think the drawings are in there as far as the way it looks.
Yep.
With the look of the home, I don't plan to change anything as far as how it fits into downtown Zionsville, that's for sure.
Very good. And do you have an idea or specification of how much wider the garage will be than it was?
Susie, how much wider would it be? It's 30, 20, it's 12.
Okay, so we're going 4 feet on each side. Is that correct?
We're gonna line up with the side yard setback that's already there. And then move and still be within the allowed setback. The only thing that's really a non-compliance is the existing garage that we took out was at 12 feet back from the alley. And we're maintaining that line. It just isn't.
Yeah. So the
as far as
setback, you're not gaining, you're not adding for an additional setback. You're just trying to put a nonconformity into legal
right.
standing because that's the way it always was.
That's the way it was, that's where the garage was. And then we're with the widening of your garage, the 20 by 20 car garage, it will not be wider than the width of the house.
Okay. And one of the things we also talk about is the findings of fact, and I think you addressed it pretty well, but I just want to make sure we have it as we continue our discussion tonight. I'm going to go back there, lots of papers. Specifically regarding the garage and the increased size of the garage, and the fact that it's going to be attached. Those are kind of what I would call modern amenities for nice homes. And so would you say that it would be difficult for you to age in this home, age in place in this home if you had to walk across a slippery sidewalk from your garage into your home?
I have fallen before, and I'm not as old as I hope to get.
And in addition, a narrow garage is difficult to open up, car doors wide enough to get in and out and those types of things.
It's been really a nightmare, to tell you the truth.
Okay.
You know, even my little granddaughter can't really get out. On one side, we have to.
At least not without banging a door.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. What questions do we have for the petitioner tonight? Oh, I would also note, we did receive several letters of support from your neighbors. So those have been filed and they are part of our record.
Oh, great.
So thank you.
Thank you, neighbors.
Any questions for the petitioner at this time? Okay. Are there any members of you can have a seat. Thank you. Any members of the public who wish to speak on this particular petition? And you're welcome to speak for or against. And I will also, those of our members who are online or public who are online, if you wish to speak on this particular petition, please raise your hand and we will get to you momentarily. Please state your name and address for the record.
Glenn Wright, 95 East Poplar, so just adjacent to her house. It's a beautiful home. I know Zionsville really wants to keep that look. And, there's so many homes in Zionsville that have been torn down and, then they get the modern amenities. So I think this idea of actually allowing some homes to be modernized with respect to the traditional structure, we're all for it. We really think it's a great thing to do.
Thank you. And you're an immediate neighbor, correct?
Immediate neighbor.
Very good. Thank you for participating tonight. Any comments from our online community?
Mr. Wolf, there are no hands raised.
Any other comments from those who are present? Seeing none, may we have the staff report?
Certainly. Staff is supportive of the petition as it's been filed. Certainly, this is, I would say, a very common petition for this board to consider, both a reduction in setback and a modest lot coverage petition. Certainly, as noted, the requested setback is the setback that has been enjoyed previously on the property. However, it would be in a different form, attached versus detached. The ordinance and it talks about that differently. However, the ordinance also supports a 24 by 36 garage under certain circumstances. So you have a couple different things happening here, but in the same breath, you have a project that looks to keep the form and certainly stick with the theme that you find in the area. Certainly this works well in current conversations in terms of your form-based ordinance and other efforts, as we understand it from the historical group that preservezionsville.com specifically references form on that website. Certainly it seems like other folks are focusing on that besides the town staff. Be that all said, again, staff is supportive of the petition as it's been filed. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Long. I think this is always a good opportunity. We've had some sensitive petitions in this particular area, but this is always a good time to discuss the fact that not all lot coverage is created equal. And specifically, driveways are not lot coverage, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so as I look at this particular petition, it seems modest in nature and consistent with the neighborhood, but that's my opinion. I turn it over to the rest of my board members for any conversation or discussion.
I mean, I would state as well that the scale of this doesn't outweigh the scale of the rest of the house. You know, they're not asking to take a small house and put a garage with an addition over top of it and, you know, a two-story kind of bridge between the two. I mean, you've got something that continues and respects the scale of what is on the street all the way back to the alley. And I don't see that there's an issue with doing that.
Yeah, and I think maybe another thing that we potentially glossed over is the fact that some of the adjoining properties are commercial in nature, which does change the look and feel of that particular area. And it's probably a hardship for that or a uniqueness to that particular location. So,
yeah.
Any other discussion amongst the group? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion.
I move that docket 2021-16-DSV, development standard variance in order to provide for an addition to a single-family home which deviates from the required rear yard setback and lot coverage in the urban residential village zone district be approved as filed based on the finding of facts and substantially compliant with the submitted site plans.
Thank you, Mr. Mundy. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Mr. DeLong, will you conduct a roll call vote?
Certainly. Mr. Jones,
Aye.
Mr. Mundy,
Aye.
Mr. Lake,
Aye.
Mr. Wolf.
Aye. Motion carries. Good luck with your project.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Thank you for reaching out to your neighbors. It makes our job a little easier. Mr. Kilmer, do we have any members of our public online who are still there that we should acknowledge for participating in our conversation?
That's an excellent question. If there's those that are still online, if you would like to be acknowledged as attending the meeting tonight, please raise your hand at this time. We do have Sally Zalonis who has raised her hand.
Thank you, Ms. Zalonis. Always nice to see you.
That is the only hand raised.
Thank you, Roger. Any other matters we need to discuss tonight? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned.
Okay.